November 13th. You were there, girl. You can pull it off. I know you can. No, you'll be fine.
I'm all swatted out.
Okay, are we live? Okay. All right. Good evening. Welcome to the Thursday, November 7th, 2019 meeting of the Harbor Advisory Board. We're in the Veterans Memorial Building, and we have a quorum this evening. Ms. Meissen is not with us this evening, but we do have a quorum. So we'll begin with a call to order and a moment of silence, please. My moment of silence was for Lynn. She's having cataract surgery, which we hope goes just the way it ought to go. So, okay, Pledge of Allegiance. Dave, you want to lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, that's next is Chair, Advisory Board Member, and Liaison announcements and presentations. Madam Liaison.
Thank you. Marlis McPherson, your liaison to the City Council. I just wanted to ask you, first of all, if there's anything that you would like me to announce at the next council meeting, which will be next Tuesday, 5:30. So if there's any events or anything you'd like me to announce, I'd be happy to do that. And then I just wanted to tell you, I noticed that you are going to be discussing the goal-setting process and the work planning process. And right now, it is tentatively scheduled, the policy discussion on that, the policy handbook discussion for the December 12th meeting, or at least it's the first meeting in December. I think it's the 12th, but it's the second Tuesday in December. So the mayor and I have yet to meet to finalize that. So I will take whatever input you have to give, and I will take it, and the mayor and I will talk about it, and then you will see it on the 12th. And you're welcome to come to that meeting, and if you'd like, and attend and participate. So,
Marlis, you sent out an invitation some time ago to the HAB inviting commentary on the bylaws and the procedures, and you received some input.
Yes.
And that is already in the works?
Well,
by that I mean it's been received.
It has been received,
okay.
Yes.
So this is a solicitation for any additional thoughts that any of us might have.
Well, I notice it's on your agenda for tonight, so I will
It is.
take careful notes.
Okay. It's in a slightly different form, but yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm at your service.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Do we have any announcements before we'll go down the line? Gene?
Yes, I want to publicly thank the commercial fishermen for bringing albacore back to our town. Jeremiah, I thank you very much. We've got ours canned up, and what you did is a real community service, and I think everybody in the community really appreciates it.
Thank you.
Jeremiah?
Well, many thanks to Gene for the wonderful compliment, and we did have a good season this year. There was other boats that brought albacore back also, so we want to remember those guys. And I'm not going to name them because I'll miss one. So I wasn't present here. We were up in Oregon and Washington fishing. It was a very good year up there for many of the Morro Bay fishermen, by the way. access those waters during that time of year. And there are quite a few. There was a good season. The weather was incredibly good, and for a prolonged period of time. And the fishing was good, so everybody hopefully had a decent season. Unfortunately, the crab season that was scheduled to open on the 15th of November here has been delayed, and there's been a new, I don't know how many people are aware, and I don't want to delve into it because it's naturally complicated, but the Center for Biological Diversity sued the state of California because of whale entanglement they claim is due to the Dungeness crab pots. Well, through negotiation and so forth and so on, and avoiding an all-out court battle, it seems like when there is whales sighted in a zone, that zone is not allowed to open. Now, there is a number of whales. I don't know the number, so they have to cite X amount of whales, and they have done so, and the season right now is in limbo. So as long as the whales hang around, might never see another crab again. So we'll see how that plays out here in the near future. So the other fisheries in town, there was an excellent salmon season. I'm sure that was probably rehashed while I was away on other HAB meetings here. But it was an excellent salmon season. People were talking about it as far up as Washington. Everybody knew. Morro Bay was on everybody's lips on the waterfronts. So it's very good. Very happy that we were able to entertain so many out-of-town boats. And the other fisheries are going well. As a matter of fact, I went down to the fish market the other day, and they were unloading some fresh blackgill rock cod there. And I couldn't resist, so I purchased a couple of pounds, and it was beautiful. It was wonderful. So we've got rock cod and black cod, so forth, coming in also. That's about it.
Jeremiah,
What you're happy.
how many zones, if you know off the top of your head, do Morro Bay crab fishermen participate in?
Morro Bay crab fishermen traditionally participate in all the zones as far north as, so there is the zone, let's see, I don't even want to name the crab zones because they're different than other zones. I mean,
but there are multiple.
Yes, I think there is at least.
And are they all impacted by this suit?
Yes, they are. The entire state is impacted by it, and let's see. So our guys go up as far north as Crescent City. A lot of guys go to Bodega Bay. Some of our guys go to the city. So we've got them staggered up the entire coast all the way to the Oregon border. Yeah. And I don't want to get into it, but one of the things that they put in this agreement, if they see any turtles in the area, by the way, they will close the Dungeness crab down for that time. There has never been any record of a turtle entanglement. So I'm just going to leave you with that thought. So I can't figure it out. But.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
Nothing at this time.
Okay. And Sharice, with your indulgence, I'm going to go to Dana and then come back to you for your report. Dana?
Yes, I have two things I'd like to talk about, my two favorite nonprofits here, having to do with all things in the Bay and historically. First of all, the Morro Bay Youth Sailing Foundation has their 2020 calendars available. A minimum $20 donation is accepted for these. And so you can go to mbysf.org and order them right now. the old calendars up there, but there are no old calendars, so if you want to buy one, you'll get the new one. And then my other one is the Maritime Museum.
Could you repeat the access?
Oh, yes. The calendars are from the Morro Bay Youth Sailing Foundation, so you can go to mbysf.org, and you will be able to purchase them there under the For Sale tab. And then I'd also like to just put a plug in for the Morro Bay Maritime Museum. They're working on one of their boats that they've had for quite some time that they're going to be bringing into the fleet at the museum, hopefully in the middle of December, and that is the Spindrift, which is a 28-foot Monterey. And so some of you know all about this boat, but I'd like to show a few pictures so you won't be able to hear me talk while I show them.
Dana, do you know when the Spindrift was built?
1933.
1933.
Yeah, 1933 by the Genoa Boat Works, the same company, Italian brothers that built the Alma, which is the tug that we have on display. Wi-Fi it out. So here's a picture. This is a few years old, but this was donated some years back to the museum before they had any building or anything on the ground. Some years ago. And this is out by the Harbor Department's maintenance area. And so you can see it's in pretty bad repair. This whole transom area, all these planks pop, and there's a big hole here. Just a lot of rot. And when I looked at it, even after working on the Alma, I said, just get another boat. It's going to look bad. But here's a picture of the same boat in its heyday. So fished a lot out of Fort Bragg also. But these were the common boat up until around the 60s for all kinds of trawling and just different fisheries. Adapted from an Italian-style boat in the Mediterranean.
Dana, weren't the original Monterey sailing boats, Italian sailing boats, eventually?
Basically all boats were sailing.
Yeah, I realize that. But
Yeah, that's true. So here it is just this week. It's beautiful to see. I have a ton of pictures, but I don't want to spend all the time. So the repairs that were done really, really well. They have a great volunteer right now, John Berger, who had rebuilt one of these before. He's got a beautiful fishing boat that's an old patrol boat from San Diego, a Radin, that he has in the storage yard now. And he does really good work. He volunteered tons of his time. And so go out to the museum, look at, and come see this boat. It should be out in the middle of next month. Thank you.
Thank you. Therese.
Okay. Ah, damn it. Let's see if I can do this. Okay. All right. So you want me to? One thing that I wanted to mention is that I believe the Santa Crawl is now back on because of the Friends of Morro Bay. No, Rotary. Okay. And within our agenda usually is a status update.
Just a second. Talk a little. Do you have any details about the Santa Crawl? Do you know when it's going to be and where it's going to be?
I believe things are still, I think it's December 3rd.
Still in planning?
Still in planning. It just got back on to the possibility of working. So at least we know that it's going to happen in December, early in December. Okay. All right. So the lease policy update. You want me to talk about that now?
Yeah, just a little bit of historic background. I mean, because some folks that are tuning in might not be aware of that activity. So
Okay.
just a little bit of a retrospective.
All right. On the spot. Okay, so with the leases on the waterfront, we were asked to look at the lease policy document in its totality and see where there needs to be some updates. And currently, we have been working on kind of tidying up the whole thing. We have a cleanish version that we looked at October 30th? Was it 29th? Okay, great. I'm doing really well at this. Thanks for putting me on the spot. Okay. And
Only because you can handle it.
obviously. Okay, so we reread from beginning to end, and we tracked the areas where we had made changes that needed to be throughout the entire document, and if there were any other changes that needed to be looked at further. The next stage of what we're going to be working on is the master lease template and license agreement. We're also working on the vocabulary section, so any kind of definitions that might need further understanding will be in the back of the lease agreement, lease policy. And we're also looking at possible situations where a master leaseholder might not be in good standing and what possible consequences there might be with that. And our next meeting will be on Wednesday, November 13th.
Okay, thank you. And the sort of moving force behind this is our harbor director. So, Director Endersby, what is your projection for this process wrapping up?
I am hopeful we will have a near finished product to the Harbor Advisory Board, for your December meeting, to have review of it and make any recommendations you might have to it, and then get it onto the City Council probably the first part of the year, because I think we only have one council meeting in December, unless something special is scheduled. But right now it looks like early next year we'll get it to the council.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anything else on this particular portion of the agenda? We good? Okay. So this is a public comment period, a general public comment period for anything that's not on the agenda. We only have folks watching us from afar this evening, and so we don't phone in. So I think we'll move on to the consent calendar. And is there any item that any board member would like to pull?
I would like to pull half of A2, all the up to the status of pending HAB recommendations. Not that part, but
I'm a little bit confused because A2 is the Harbor Department status report.
correct.
Doesn't
And
really
it has that in there.
has our recommendation. Oh,
Yeah, it has that laundry list that we look at every meeting.
okay.
So I don't necessarily need to see that, but I would like to see the other part. And I think a lot of our viewers, people would like to hear about some of the things that have gone on.
So you're asking for an update.
Correct.
Okay.
A2.
A2. Okay. Gene?
Yeah, I have a question on the status report, in the recent city council activities. So we'll listen to Dana's and we'll bring mine up.
Okay. So A1's okay with everybody? Okay. And the Harbor Department status report. Dana, how did you have in mind that we would do this? Would the director address the report?
Well, basically,
What did you have in mind?
A2, you have 2 pages before you get to the recommendations.
Mhm.
So if they could go through that like we used to have them do it,
Mhm.
because there are some items there that I think should be noted.
Okay, you want him to go through all of them?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Mr. Director?
So you want to just go through them line by line, or box by box?
Yeah, just like we used to do.
Okay, I don't know if there's anything new. Item number 1, State Park Marina, absolutely nothing new there.
I'm sorry. But that's the part I was saying that we don't need to hear. I was talking about
Okay.
the recent department activity, recent harbor news, talking about Heart-to-Heart
All
Real
right.
Estate Incorporated giving $2,500 to Friends of Morro Bay Harbor Department, and all the way up until,
Up until the box.
yes.
Well, so if you want to ask anything of the other ones, I'll just cover the ones you covered, unless you want me to go through the whole thing. But Heart to Heart Real Estate, Herb White and his family, they've been flipping real estate, and they're doing it through that Heart to Heart Real Estate organization, which donates their portion of their proceeds to charities. And they've been focusing generously on the Friends of the Harbor Department, and they recently did another transaction, another house sale, and put another $2,500 into the Friends of the Morro Bay Harbor Department account, which was great. So, I think it's the 3rd one they've done now. So, thanks to Herb. Herb was state park lifeguard for life. That he worked in the state park system for a lot of years. Retired about 4 or 5 years ago. Worked at Montana de Oro was his last job, but also worked for us in the city doing the junior lifeguard program and helped us with our lifeguard program as well. So. Herb's staying involved, and so is his family. And I think both of his daughters have worked as lifeguards with us as well. So I want to thank Herb for that. October 26th, we're just giving shout-outs. Chuck Rawlinson from Depth Perceptions. We did another dive cleanup down at the docks down by the launch ramp. Had over 50 divers. There's a list of items recovered. According to Chuck, they had a lot less than what they anticipated. I think their last dive in that area was probably about 15 years ago. They've just been bouncing up and down the waterfront over the last 20, 25 years, doing these great cleanups every year, and we help them get things out of the water and get them to properly disposed of or recycled, and they have a lot of great folks that come out and get in the water and help on dry land as well. So I want to give a shout out to Depth Perceptions for that.
Director, before you move on from that, I have a suggestion. And there were local volunteers on the docks assisting the divers, and one of the things the Harbor Department might want to make sure, because there was no really direct liaison between the divers and the volunteers, although they work together, is to make sure that those docks get cleaned up by the volunteers or somebody before everybody leaves.
Okay. Duly noted. And a couple of those other organizations were the Friends of the Bay and the Morro Bay National Estuary Program. To get to Gene's question, Gene?
Yeah, I was curious on October 8th, the City Council conceptually approved of a pilot building lease agreement with the paddleboard company at lease site 6970, which is the old Morro Bay Aquarium. And I'm just curious, what is a pilot building lease agreement, and what are they going to do there?
So the paddleboard company has since closed down. They used to be, at least their brick and mortar shop, they used to be just south of the aquarium. And they've decided to close down their retail shop, and they were looking for an alternative. We are currently working on, in conjunction with our lease policy update, but not as part of it, but it'll, I think, be an add-on to the lease policy update, a license agreement program that we've also got conceptual agreement from the council to move forward with that will enable us to license various businesses that are operating along the waterfront and on the beach. Instead of using public air use permits for folks that come in and do for-profit events, we'll be able to do a license agreement program. And one of these type businesses that would be able to come under this would be folks like the Twist and the Paddleboard Company doing mobile-based operations such as paddleboarding or kayaking, where they don't necessarily have a brick-and-mortar presence on the waterfront. Right now, we do not have such a provision for them to be able to do that, so we've always sent those kind of folks to go brick-and-mortar. And with the internet and really even REI coming to San Luis Obispo, it's going to get pretty tough for retailers like that to do business in town, so they're going mobile. And so the council conceptually agreed to put them in at the aquarium lease site. They will be occupying space back there, probably with storage of their trailer and some of their equipment. But we just use that site as I don't want to call it an air site, but a temporary occupancy site until we get our license agreement program up and running, at which time we'll bring them under that program. But for now, we'll run them under sort of a pilot license agreement program, be a temporary at the aquarium site until they can get until we can get the larger program in place.
So my question is, will they be operating paddleboards out of the water side, on the lee side there?
No.
Okay.
The improvements there are too far gone. That
Yes.
wharf there is really unusable for that. They'll be still operating as they do now, as does Morro Bay Paddleboard Company. They operate largely out of Coleman Beach and Tidelands Park as well. I think Stand-Up Paddleboard operates at Tidelands a fair amount, and Morro Bay Stand-Up Paddleboard operates out of Coleman. So they generally bring their trailer, and customers show up there, and then they'll have walk-ins there as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Well, excuse me, the Morro Bay Paddle Company, they just took over where Horizons used to be, so they'll be going off the dock there.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Morro Bay Paddleboard Company, who
Subleasing.
was in and probably still is in Marina Square. I don't know if they've made the total change yet, but they're moving out of Marina Square over to the old Kayak Horizons as a subtenant. And also need to announce, while we've got the door open, as we were talking before the meeting, the tall ships have canceled out, unfortunately. Apparently they've run into some pretty significant maintenance issues with both those boats, the Hawaiian Chieftain and the Lady Washington, so they are not traveling right now. They're, I think, up in Washington State, where they're home ported, and not coming here, unfortunately. And then the Santa Crawl, Lori found some information on that.
December, I did too.
Okay. Take it away.
The Santa Crawl will be December 6th. That's a Friday. And it's the same night as the restaurant Large Vessel. Lighted Large Vessel Parade. December 6th.
Okay. That's all I have.
Before we leave this, under recent council activity is a report of council activity as it relates to the proposed Morro Bay Aquarium from the Central Coast Aquarium folks. And what is the status, please, of Three Stacks and a Rock Brewery going into that building?
We are working with them still to occupy that space. They've done a fair amount of architecture and engineering. I'm working on getting, right now, some testing for potential asbestos and lead issues in that building. So once we get past that, we'll continue working on with Three Stacks' proposal and plan to move in there. They're still planning on moving in. The council action we took a couple meetings ago was to get approval to move them forward in time. They were to be occupying that space by December 1st, but due to, I think, the job being a little larger than they anticipated, but also the potential asbestos and lead issues we got to get past, we ran into some potential seismic issues that probably knocked us back a couple months trying to find the records on that building and what sort of seismic construction standards it was built to. So that set us back a couple months in them getting their engineering, getting their plans to community development. So we need to move out into April probably to get them opened up, to give them a little more time.
And their intentions are unchanged?
the
To
intentions
the best
are
of your
unchanged.
knowledge.
Yes.
Okay. Dana, you okay? Yeah. All righty. Okay, so business items, B1. Update from the Boatyard Marine Services Facility Ad Hoc Committee. The committee's recent activities. Dana.
Mr.
We have no update at
Sorry?
this time.
Chairman, if I can jump back in, you need to approve the minutes. You
I
didn't
think
take a vote on it.
That's true. We did not take a formal vote. We just
Everybody was
sort of
okay,
all,
but you
we
didn't
just
vote.
all nodded our heads. So, okay. So a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I make a motion.
Okay. And a second. Okay, moved and second. Any discussion? None. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you, Eric. Okay. Dana, Boatyard.
Yes, we have no update at this time.
Okay. And I'm not calling for public comment for the same reason that I skipped over it or moved past it the first time, which is we don't have any public with us in the room, with the exception of our liaison, who's also public. But so no. Okay. So B2, update from the Finance and Budget Ad Hoc Committee. Mark.
Mr. Enders, we understand that we have good news with regard to the Triangle lot. With regard to occupancy.
We're pretty full on the space we have allocated. There's a little extra space in there that's not too usable because it's very soft ground. I think people will get stuck, but we're pretty much full in that lot. So looking at maybe pushing the fence boundaries out a little bit, but things are looking good.
What, give or take, what percentage of the total lot area has now been relegated to boat storage?
This is somewhat of a guess, but I'm probably going to say it's close to half, but probably a little less because we don't go all the way to the south, cutting that lot entirely in half. So it's probably somewhere 40-45% of the lot, maybe.
Okay, and is it returning net revenue?
Yeah, we're putting money in the fund.
If I'm sure the board recalls what the division of revenue was between the general fund and the harbor fund.
The council action was council direction was to put that money in a separate standalone fund, allowing the harbor department to charge against it whatever time and materials we use to manage it, and then we go to council occasionally if we've got a project we think is worthy of spending some of that money on, but it sits in its own separate fund. Doesn't go to harbor, doesn't go to general.
Okay, that was the clarification
It's
I
a
was
holding
looking
fund.
for. Yeah. Okay. And was there revenue derived from the Harbor Festival, which used part of that space?
We don't receive direct revenue from the Harbor Festival, no. Just the revenue the city gets from Harbor Festival's permit fees and ancillary revenue from people being in town and spending their money elsewhere.
Is that by way of saying that the only revenue that is derived from using that facility as a storage for boat and marine related stuff is relegated to whatever portion is fenced off at any given time?
Yes, yeah.
And is there a policy or an agreement or a determination within the city that if there's more storage needed, the fence will move out?
There's no specific policy or procedure in place for that. When we brought it to council for initial approval, it was, I think we had roughly half the lot divided north to south. Conceptually is what the yard would be. We ended up not going into the south. And we didn't put up, as you know, we didn't put up permanent fencing. We first tried no fencing, which didn't garner very many customers. Just I don't think people didn't like not having any security. So we did temporary fencing. We started small, not knowing what our usage would be, and figured, especially with temporary fencing or mobile fencing, we could move it out. So now that we are full, we're planning on expanding out a little bit. And we didn't go south, also partly because the Morby Landing, Bob Fowler Morby Landing, where the old Verges was, that whole project took a good chunk of that southern lot as their laydown yard, and they're now out of there. So we'll be looking at expanding out a little bit towards what our original parameters were, at least our original proposed footprint was, because it looks like now we have the demand. So, and with that temporary fencing, it's pretty easy to do.
Is that storage utilization being marketed?
Yeah.
How so?
I think we've got it on Craigslist. It's on websites. I mean, we don't actively go out and do a heck of a lot of advertising for it, but word of mouth seems to get around pretty well.
Okay.
Nothing further.
Okay. Okay. B3, update from the EELGRASS Ad Hoc Committee. That chair is not with us this evening. Anybody have any information? No? Eric, do you have any information about the EELGRASS process?
Yeah, the only thing I want to convey is in my last conversations with Anchor QEA, our consultant that we had been working with, their recommendation, I'm not sure we've ever got this fully conveyed to the whole HAB, but their recommendation in terms of going to the regulators, excuse me, and proposing an alternative way of looking at eelgrass was they recommended not doing that at this time, in that, one, it could be fairly expensive. They definitely recommended not pursuing a full eelgrass mitigation bank or other major policy change, because that's in the multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars to prosecute something like that. But they stated, since the consultant, Kathy Novak, has been having a fair amount of success, lease site by lease site, getting fairly creative with the regulators and dealing with the eelgrass. Their Anchor's recommendation was just stick till that until that runs out, until the regulators stop getting creative and being flexible and doing it on a case-by-case basis.
Does the department perceive an ongoing need for the ad hoc committee?
Yeah, I think at some point, yes, I would say we keep it, just so we've got it active, and if anything changes. But for the immediate future, yes, I'd say let's keep it in place and keep in touch with Kathy Novak and and Anchor, and just see how things develop.
And Kathy is a part of that Glenn's committee, is that correct?
Yeah, she's on the ad hoc committee.
Mm-hmm. Okay. B4, continued discussion of Harbor Advisory Board work planning, the role of the Harbor Advisory Board in the City Council goal, objective, and work planning process. And there is a formal staff report for this. Eric, do you want to address the staff report?
Yeah, I will. Thank you. So, we addressed bylaws and Harbor Advisory Board scheduling and working with the goals and objectives and Harbor Advisory Board and how that all works a couple of meetings ago. And on this particular topic, the work planning effort and how we get what the Harbor Advisory Board thinks it wants to do for a given year and what the council wants to do and how we mesh those things together. We really didn't give it a lot of discussion at that meeting. I thought it was worthy to bring back, especially with our council subcommittee working on the bylaws and potential changes to it and how the whole process works. So bringing it back for another shot at it. From the standpoint of what we've done in the past with Harbor Advisory Board goal planning and council goal planning, I kind of outlined 4 general ways in which we've prosecuted those, and those are in the discussion section of your staff report under A, B, C, and D. First method, and these aren't in any particular order or how we've done them predominantly or any kind of a timeline in the past. It's just how I wrote them up, I think, from maybe least complicated to most, or the vice versa. But the first method is the council setting its goals and objectives and giving the HAB a work plan to execute and achieve those goals, with a little bit of input from the Harbor Advisory Board through our meeting process. But generally, the council setting goals and objectives and deciding, okay, Harbor Advisory Board, we want you to do A, B, C, and D, and then there's your marching orders. That's one method. Another method we've done in the past is the council setting its goals and objectives and then working collaboratively and directly with the Harbor Advisory Board In some of those years, we've done joint meetings, as you recall. The Harbor Advisory Board and Council have met. Sets the HAB's work plan in more of a interactive, collaborative fashion. And then item C on there is Council setting its goals and objectives and working less directly with the Harbor Advisory Board, basically taking Harbor Advisory Board public input or input through me, through the Council, and setting the Harbor Advisory Board's work plan, which seems like it's probably the most straightforward and the smoothest and probably most common method we've done in the past. And then the fourth way of doing it is Council doing its goal and objective setting process, and concurrently, the HAB establishes its own goals. If you recall, a couple of years we had our own meetings, set our own goals and objectives, and then kind of mesh them and merge them with what the Council's goals and objectives were, and try to come up with a common theme to figure out what the Harbor Advisory Board's work plan was. So just wanted to get a little more HAB input on process-wise what you all think is a good process, any iterations or sub-iterations of any of these four that we want to talk about, and really figure out what's going to be the best and most effective way to get what the Harbor Advisory Board thinks it wants to do and what the Council wants to do, and meshing the two together and making sure we have a cohesive work plan to get the Council's goals and objectives executed.
So, Board, for the foreseeable future, this is our opportunity to share with Council how we think we can be the most effective in serving Council. And we've been invited to do that by our liaison as well. So there's four, as the Harbor Director points out in his staff report, there are 4 models listed. There are any number of iterations possible, something entirely different, some modification of the 4, or any one of the 4. So what I'm interested in tonight, and I'm going to go down the row, is what each of you think is the most effective way for this body to support the City Council in light of the mission of this body, which is described in its bylaws. Dana?
Well, I think that with the council setting its goals and objectives and working indirect with the HAB, I think that's good. I think with our liaison and with staff, we get the items that we're working on to council, or the items that we want to see worked on. So I think that is a fluid enough way to work, to make this work.
Well, that sounds like a hybrid between C and D.
Yeah, kind of does.
So let me restate so that I understand your position. On the one hand, Council sets its goals and objectives. That's a desirable thing, some of which involve the harbor, which means they involve, by definition, the Harbor Advisory Board. And in addition to that, or concurrent with that, you would like to see the Harbor Advisory Board develop its work plan and then do what? Submit it to, you said through staff to council. We don't work for staff, we work for council. So.
Well, I'm just saying that, or through our liaison, because there's council right there.
Yes. Yes.
It just seems like that's what we've been trying to do for a while, and it seems to be working. I agree that it should be a little more refined, but yes, just.
So a hybrid of C and D.
Correct.
Okay, good. Any questions for Dana before we move on to Sharice's input? Okay, Sharice, what's your thought?
Okay. Well, I chose D, but it might still be a hybrid of sorts. But if we have all of our declaration of future agenda items that we've written down, if we can take one time a year to spend a session labeling and describing what those goals are and what it is that we really want to look at for the future, and then submit that as a document to the council for them to include in their decision as far as what the future things that we're going to be working for that year is my suggestion.
Okay. Give me just a second. Okay, Mark?
I'm most inclined to side with item B. We're working collaboratively and directly with the council. And with that, I think you get much better input, much better collaboration, creates a air of buy-in by all parties. And I think everybody would be better served by that level of communication rather than the level of communication we have currently.
And would you suggest some logistical process to do that, bearing in mind that council has, in the last couple of years, let us know that its time is precious. It has chosen, this is not a criticism, it's a simple statement of fact, it has chosen not to have joint meetings with the advisory bodies, but to develop its goals and objectives and then have those flow down as they might or will or should to the advisory bodies. I mean, that's kind of the model that we're on right now. So how do you see this collaborative process taking place?
Well, we can jointly work with our liaison as part of our goal setting, and also she can bring the goals and objectives from council to us, and as it is a part of the process. In lieu of having a joint meeting, every year council changes, right? And so every year there's that opportunity to have a higher level of cooperation, higher level of collaboration, and a higher level of input.
And I would add information, given what you said about that folks change on council from time to time. One of the things that I have noticed over time is that a new council person often has little information about the nature or the workings or maybe even the importance of the harbor in all of its manifestations. So that would be a vote for your model. Jeremiah?
Well, I think the opinions and thoughts on all of the subjects that we deal with the Air Harbor Advisory Department are a valuable commodity, and they're more valuable probably than many of our paid consultants. And coming up with our own recommendations, which are brought through the city staff, thanks to Marlis. And then hopefully they, along with the council and mayor, will glean some valuable insights and additions involving the harbor department. And as Ron just mentioned, and it's true, I'm not slighting anybody who comes onto our city council, even if it's the mayor, not knowing all of the workings of the waterfront, because it's part of Morro Bay, but unfortunately it's separate. So there's many people right here in town, good friends, very intelligent, so I'm not slighting these people because they just don't get to the waterfront as much as we do. And so consequently the Harbor Advisory fills in that gap. So I think the importance of the advisory board to the city council are imperative.
Given that, Jeremiah, do you think that in any of these four models that are in the staff report would serve to meet your purposes, or some modification of one or more?
Refresh me on that. I'm sorry, the four that we just wrote on here? Oh, yeah.
B4 staff report, bottom of B4 staff report, page 1.
Well, D seems to be the one that would work for me, I think. We should be the ones to carry these forward. Is that, I'm missing a question, I'm sorry.
No, there's nothing to miss.
Yeah.
You stated your position, and I'm asking you if any of these four models, and they don't have to, it could be something different, if any of these four models would satisfy your thinking, or some modification of one or more of them.
Yeah, the C, that we set our own goals and objectives and work indirectly.
That's, I'm sorry, what? No, that's not what C says.
The council sets its own goals and objectives, working within indirect Harbor Advisory Board input. From Harbor Advisory Board member, public comment, and staff input, the council sets the Harbor Advisory Board work plan.
Yeah, and I heard you sort of kind of talking about D as opposed to C.
I did say D originally.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and
So you would propose D.
C.
C.
I changed.
Oh, you're changing. Oh, okay. So your C would satisfy your thoughts?
Yes.
Okay, so that's indirect harbor input. Indirect. Basically, what that means is we discover a pathway to provide our input to council. And we have the indirect pathways are our staff, to a lesser degree in terms of being indirect, our liaison. We also have the opportunity, by virtue of our bylaws and city policy, to communicate our thinking directly to council on any matter that we choose. So there we have a variety of choices.
So B is, in reading it, is business as usual. Is that correct? That's what we are doing currently.
Okay, that's not my movie, but doesn't mean that that's correct. I mean, my movie is that C is more or less how we are functioning at present.
Was this item discussed prior to this meeting?
No, sir.
No, it wasn't. Okay.
We were invited, the Harbor Advisory Board was invited some time ago to provide input to our liaison regarding our bylaws and our policies and our procedures. And this is sort of a higher level of that. That's sort of the 10,000 foot level. This is at the 20 or even the 30,000 foot level. So my interpretation of this particular agenda item is that this is an opportunity for this body to communicate to council how it thinks it can be the most effective in working with council.
So the bottom line is I wasn't prepared for this.
Well, that's okay.
Hadn't reviewed it.
That's okay.
And
So let's do Gene while you cogitate. Is that okay? Oh, okay, because we need your input, so. Gene?
Okay, it says that we briefly discussed this issue in October, and I thought we spent quite a bit of time in October talking about this, and unfortunately, we don't have the minutes to review what we discussed, but I can understand that they're under a lot of pressure to get a lot of things done. I feel strongly that the men and women working on our waterfront need a voice. I think it's paramount to hear them first, and then we bring that project, their concerns, up to the city council for them to include in their goals and objectives. I would strongly suggest that we have it from the bottom up instead of from the top down. And C would work, but I would see more emphasis on the Harbor Department's or Harbor Advisory Board input being taken more seriously.
So does it strike you that any of the four models on this in the staff report would achieve your goals?
Well,
or something different?
C is close, but I'd like to see more input, more concern, more weight added to the Harbor Advisory Board's goals and their own goals and objectives. The working waterfront people, they come to us, and we're their voice. We're the voice of the people who work on the waterfront. And the council sometimes, in respect, sometimes just doesn't have enough time to listen to us. And I think it's sad. We are what keeps Morro Bay going. And we need to have the council understand us and pay more attention to us. So C, but more emphasis from the Harbor Advisory Board. More weight to what we say. I realize we're at advisory capacity, but they should listen to us for our advice.
Wish I said that.
You can adopt it if you'd like. Okay, I got it. Charisse?
Can I suggest an E?
Of course.
Okay.
Or an F, or
So,
a G, or an H.
I'm just listening to everybody, and I'm thinking if we could have an E, it would say the council has its goal and objective setting process, and concurrently the HAB establishes a set of its own goals and objectives, and the two are merged not merged, and both goals are added to the work plan with council goals taking priority.
Harbor Advisory Board.
Well,
That's what I would. I mean, all of them would get covered, but the council goals would take priority. I would say because they're elected officials too, and they're all. I think they have a little. They chose us as well, so I would give them a little more priority. We can go with F and just swap those two.
So help me I think I heard what you said. Help me understand why that's not covered in Model D.
Because it still says with the council deciding what HAB goal, objective, and work plan items will carry forward. So if we find something is significant and they don't, we just don't talk about it.
You mean?
Indeed, that's how I read it.
Yeah, you mean it. Okay, and your E is different how?
And it says, and both goals are added to the work plan. So the final say in what is decided on what the goals will be is not just the council's decision. It's both goals move forward. So we have a goal setting session, and the council has a goal-setting session, and we move forward with both of them, but the council goals take a little bit more priority over the other ones, over the HAB ones. And a lot of the times they're going to merge. Suggestion.
You just created an E. I'm writing it down. That's why we're here. That's what we're doing.
Might need an F.
I don't care how many there are. It makes no difference to me. That's, and then when each has had its say, it would be really great if we then could achieve a consensus for a model that we would like to recommend to the council subcommittee, as opposed to giving them six different approaches. Although we don't have 6, we actually have 4 right now. So, Jeremiah, your thoughts? Are they
frankly,
focused?
Gene said it as succinctly as like I said, I wish I could have said that myself. That's perfect.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And if that would take, I know that you have probably a very well written.
I don't.
What have you been doing?
I was waiting for you. Dana?
Well, as much as I like what my fellow members are talking about, because I think our voice should be heard more, and our work plans, I just wanted to look at the bylaws as far as advisory bodies advise us, what they say, and it says, we advise the city council and city manager on matters within our area of responsibility and interest, help focused attention on specific issues and problems within the scope. Oh, wait, I said that. Within their scope of responsibilities and recommend action and alternatives for council consideration. Act as channels of communication among city government, general public, and interest groups, and balance community wants with municipal responsibility and resources. So, it'd be easier to say what we say should happen if we were a commission rather than an advisory board. But being an advisory board, I'm just wondering if we can step that boundary.
Well, I appreciate that, actually, that you, I do appreciate that you read that into the record, because that's really the mandate of an advisory board, be it this one or any other. And my perception, doesn't mean I'm correct about this, is that the model that we've been operating, the process model that we've been operating for the last couple of years, is not consistent with that mandate. To paraphrase Gene, it's a top-down. And that mandate, loosely put, is a bottoms-up. So that happens to, I guess it's my turn, so that's my position, is that I would like to pursue a model, an operational model that is consistent with the mandate that's in the bylaws, and provides the opportunities for this body to do the significant number of responsibilities that are outlined in that mandate, some of which were touched on by Gene and Jeremiah this evening. So I don't see either A, B, C, or D, as it happens, being a model that I would like to recommend to the council subcommittee, but one which more accurately reflects the mandate and the bylaws. Therese? Of course. That's what we're doing.
One of the things that I think is important for us to all look at right now is a lot of the reason why the council has put anything as a goal for us is because they have a decision-making process of which they need advisement, more detail in order to make their decision. And so that's why I think that those particular issues should also have a priority, because in order for them to make a decision, if we gather the information for them and give them a really good area of understanding through all of the different areas that we come from and the people that we talk to, that's what the goal is as far as an advisory board, in my opinion, is to give them the answer so they can make the decision on a current issue that they're going to have to think about or decide.
I think that's absolutely correct, and it's important for any advisory body, much less this one, to bear in mind why council developed the current model. It did that 3 years ago when it embarked upon a modified and updated goals and objective settings process, which it refined after the first year into sort of the present more streamlined model. And to reinforce some of your thinking, Charisse, council would be quick to tell us, as they have told me, council members have told me, they have more on their plate that they can than they can actually handle, and that they will choose from time to time what they perceive to be the most important things in terms of the community and their obligations to the community, and hence they set their goals and objectives for a year at a time, and that filters down to us. So I think I have no control over that. They know what they need to do, or they believe that they know what they need to do. What we're missing, I think, is some effective way to process, to communicate to council all of the things that we've all said this evening about what our interests are and what our concerns are and what we feel our obligations to the community and to the waterfront are. That's kind of what's missing. Any other commentary before we move on to try to wrap this up? Gene.
How about an F? The Harbor Advisory Board sets its goals and objectives and gives the council its work plan items to execute to achieve those goals with some input from the council. I just took A and switched it around.
Say it one more time, please, because I hear you have it right there in your computer.
You can see A, just switch it around. The Harbor Advisory Board sets its goals and objectives and gives the City Council its work plan items to execute to achieve those goals with some input from the City Council.
Would you agree to inserting the word recommended?
Yeah, that's fine.
Could you put that in? I mean, you have a computer, and because you're going to email that to me later on?
Sure.
Yeah. So, did what Gene just recite? How close is that to Dana? We'll do a poll. We'll try to move this through here. How close does that come to meeting your thoughts?
Yeah, it says, so the City Council work plan items to execute. I'm just going through here, looking at it again. So the Harbor Advisory Board sets its goals and objectives and gives that to the council, its work plan items.
It's recommended.
It's recommended work plan items to execute. So, but they're not executing it. We are, aren't we?
Well, we're not. We can't execute.
Okay.
Well,
okay, correct.
But
it says here they have
but we
its work plan
we can
items.
certainly recommend.
In the original, in A, it says that we are executing it.
Well, what it says, what A says is the council sets its goals and objectives and then gives the HAB its work plan. That's a top-down process, not a bottom-up process.
That.
And Gene's suggesting to reverse the order.
Okay, with the recommendation.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm good with that. Right.
Cerise?
I'm going to stick with D and an annual session to submit a document to council.
Okay. Madam Liaison? It seems important for us to ask you a question about possible process. Sure. Do you happen to have D in front of you?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Is D possible?
I should have my glasses, though. Let me tell you how I perceive it's been working over the last couple of years, and I would also just add why we stopped doing the joint meetings where we had the council just couldn't handle, because we have so many advisory boards, and we're already having special meetings on top of our regular council meetings, and we could not even schedule all the individual separate meetings with all of the advisory boards to do this joint setting. That's why we disbanded with B. We are currently doing something called C, although what we've asked is to have staff have a session with the advisory board where they make their recommendations on what they'd like to see in the goals and objectives as it pertains to their area and their issues. And then that comes forward to us during the goal-setting sessions, which they're welcome to also attend. We have like 3 public meetings where we do goal-setting, and everyone is welcome to attend, so advisory board members can also come. But we've already gotten through the staff person what you would like to see. And the final decision really has a lot to do with the capacity of the staff and the council and the advisory board and what we think we can realistically accomplish in the coming year. So that's how that negotiation finally wraps up. It really does we have to say, this is a worthy goal, but do we really have the staff time to work on that in the coming year? And the city manager plays a large role in helping us to make those decisions, and that's kind of how the priorities get set. So that describes the current process. And I'm happy to I will take anything that you want to recommend back to the full council for discussion, or to the subcommittee, and then the subcommittee to the full council. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and a follow-up question. And this is a one-time, the goal-setting process you're talking about. That's a one-time-a-year activity.
Yes, it starts in January. And from the goals, then the budget gets established. So first we establish the goals, and then we establish a work plan, and then the budget.
And hypothetically, if you're comfortable addressing it, and if you're not, fine, just tell us.
Well, I don't want to give you my opinions. I want to stick to,
I'm not asking for an opinion.
Okay, thank you.
I'm asking for commentary on process.
Okay.
If to pick a month, any time after council sets its goals and objectives for the next year, if some burning issue is identified as it relates to the harbor, and the Harbor Advisory Board becomes aware of it and declares it as a future agenda item and discusses it in a public format in the appropriate way, and decides that something should be done about that, how would they move it forward?
Well,
we have 2 pathways now. We can communicate it to staff, and
Correct.
Staff sends it up the hill, or we can communicate it directly to council as per policies and procedures.
Correct.
But then what? because we've experienced not necessarily any action, apparent action on the part of council after we do that. And that's one of the concerns that's being expressed here this evening.
Well, the other alternative would be to actually come to a council meeting. If you have formally taken action on an issue and you have asked that you all want to address it, you can come, you as the chair could come to a council meeting and ask that it be agendized on the council as a future agenda item. And then the council will discuss whether or not they can fit it in to the existing array of issues that we have to address, if it can be added to the agenda. But you can always ask any item, and at every meeting, a council member often will suggest future agenda items. So I could also do that if you want me to do that for you. But then it is up to the council, and we'd have to have 3 members that would say, yes, I want to add that to the council's agenda.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
No, I mean, there are ways that you can do it, but it does need to be formally asked for.
The city's policies and procedures are very clear about that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep, very clear.
Any other questions?
Oh, I'm sorry, no. I thought you were through, sorry.
No.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Jeremiah?
Is that something that we should adopt as a policy now?
Well, B4 is what B4 is asking us for is to provide council with an advisory, and I think we're there. What I would propose is that I take the notes from each one that each one of you expressed. There was some growing consensus toward the end, and let me draft something and send it out to you for your review and commentary. And as I understand it, we're pushing the deadline, so we'll do that within the next week, and then whatever the outcome of that is, that's what we'll put forward to council. Is that satisfactory?
Sounds good.
Satisfactory? Gene?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for that. That's important stuff. Okay, that brings us to B5. B5 is a discussion on the staff report says Harbor Department strengths. That's a misstatement. It's a discussion on Harbor. You can just drop off the word department. The department is part and parcel of the Harbor, so it is included by definition in the SWOT as an element, but the agenda item is actually broader than that. So it's a discussion on Harbor strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, otherwise known in strategic planning as a SWOT, as they relate to City Council, Harbor Advisory Board work planning. And so to be more specific, as I communicated to each one of you when I asked for your input, we wanted to focus on the 4 goals and objectives that the council has currently communicated to the Harbor Advisory Board. And they are council goal number, and Eric, I'll give you your staff report in just a second. They are council goal to achieve economic and fiscal sustainability, council goal to improve public infrastructure, council goal to complete updates to city land use planning and zoning policies and address affordable housing issues, and goal number 4, improve communications and engagement with the community. Eric?
Thank you. I think, Ron, you've summarized pretty well. So, I'm not gonna back up into the last item, but this is a future agenda declared item, but it is a goal-related item, trying to further our process to a degree, but also identify some things that might help us not in just these 4 goals, but maybe in a larger scale. So a SWOT, SWOT, is a pretty common methodology used by people and agencies and organizations to better themselves and be more effective. And Ron Future agendized this a few meetings ago, and we finally brought it back. So what we're trying to do is just look at what are our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats when it comes to the goals in terms of the harbor. As you correctly state, not necessarily the harbor department in and of itself, although we're part and parcel to that. And Ron, I don't know if you've got a methodology you want to go through this, if you want to just go through these one by one from a goal basis, or if you just want to go through the S, the W, and the O, and the T each one at a time, or what do you think is going to be most effective?
My methodology is based upon a question for the Harbor Advisory Board, the members. How many of you availed yourself of the worksheets that I sent out and could make those available to me?
I had done mine previously.
Okay. Mark?
Say that previously.
Okay, sure. Well, we've been sitting on it for a while, so that's good. Jeremiah? Okay.
I was
Gene?
unable to open up your document.
You and your Mac book.
Eric, you wouldn't open up.
Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me? And I would have sent it to you as a PDF.
Yeah.
Okay, so this could be a really long process because there's a lot of information to go through. What I'd like to do is to give each of you the opportunity to summarize, if you will, and then provide me with what I would propose for the consideration of the Harbor Advisory Board. This isn't a dictatorship. It's a democracy. Is if it works for you, you can provide me with each of your worksheets. I will collate those worksheets, and if there are duplications, that's fine. If there are not duplications, then your input would be added to the list for each one of these identified goals, and then we would publish a summary document, or actually it's an analysis. So, in point of fact, is that okay or not okay? Somebody else have a different way we want to do this? I see shrugs of shoulders.
I'm just hoping you can read my notes.
Well, I'm going to ask
You can always ask me.
So I'm going to ask you to type them in Word. Yeah, which is why I sent you an open Word document. Yeah. And Gene's going to get it in PDF, and he can do whatever he chooses to do with it. Yeah. Either that or we'll get him.
Send it to me as an old Word document.
Either that or we'll get him a real computer. So yeah.
How about real old guys? Can they send you something with a postage stamp on it?
Yeah, that's what.
Just the Express.
Yeah. What I'll get is a tape. Somebody sent me a dictaphone tape or something. Yeah. Well, this is extremely important. My opinion is this is extremely important. This could serve as the foundational, or was intended to serve as the foundational work for us to do what we discussed during the last agenda item.
Mr. Chairman, can I jump in real quick and make a suggestion?
Absolutely.
So it sounds like we're trying not to do a long, drawn-out, everybody go through their thing and then talk about it and then try and come up with some sort of consensus at the end, correct?
That's a goal.
I also think we need to do some work publicly here.
That's why I said I'm going to ask each to summarize.
So, but it's okay. It sounded like you were getting away from that for a minute.
No.
Okay.
I'm going to
summarize.
I started off by saying each one of them.
Okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were getting away from that. Okay.
No.
Sorry. I'll shut up.
No. I don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. So let's take what we've identified here as council goal number 1. That's not the way the council did it. The council's is to achieve economic and fiscal sustainability. So Gene, your general commentary in terms of strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats as it relates to the harbor achieving economic and fiscal sustainability.
What I don't see is talk about the personnel from the harbor department and our waterfront itself. I see on every one of these categories financial is the first thing all the way down the line there. And I think we need to get some input about how the people are and the personnel person. Morro Bay is known up and down the coast for its harbor department and its people and its beautiful location. And I don't see any of that in any of this work plan. And I don't know how you get it in there, but I think that's an element to our harbor.
Well, I think that's strengths.
Well, but Gene's trying to trying to put that in terms of one of these four goals, council goals. I mean, what he says is absolutely true, but he's trying to figure out where it would live in any of these four goals.
In strength.
Well, but which one?
I would say infrastructure.
It could go in all of them.
Yeah, I think it should be some category in all of those.
Well, except maybe infrastructure.
Yes.
I think what Gene just listed was 3 general strengths at large that kind of covered all sorts of things like you're saying, Dan.
Yeah, Gene, for whatever it's worth, I have that item under improved communication and engagement with the community, and I listed it under strengths. I'm not sure that that's sufficient to your point.
It's just what I saw as I overviewed this whole thing all the way through is somehow we're not talking about our harbor, we're just talking about everything else. So, we need to talk about...
Well, all of this, put the word harbor in every single one of these.
I think so.
No, I'm telling you.
Yes,
That
okay.
was the task.
Yes.
Assume that the word harbor is embedded in each one of those 4 categories. And your point's well taken, and that point needs to be embedded in the analysis. And if it was embedded in improved communication and engagement with the community as a strength, would that serve your purposes?
Yes.
Okay. What else you got?
That's it right now.
Okay. Jeremiah?
So, in council goal number 1, achieve economic and fiscal sustainability, and under strength, pretty much had the same as Gene there. Robust tourist attraction. Number 1 was actually active commercial fishing industry, of course. Robust tourist attraction, very active sport fishing, both for hire boats and a large contingency of people who just come to town to fish. Active water sport harbors, surfing, kayaks, canoes, jet skis. And this is very important, I think Gene was leading up to it, support from the city and community. City meaning our council and our harbor department for sure. And it was absolutely true that our port is talked about up and down the coast, up and down from Mexico to Canada. Weaknesses, well, on our waterfront forever, one of the weaknesses of bathrooms, the showers, and facilities that keep getting, I don't know, I'm going to have to get some that never get vandalized or something. But
Could you make a note on that's actually infrastructure?
Oh.
As opposed to, because I'm going to get your notes, so that would go on the next one. Number 2, just put 2 down and circle it.
number 2, okay.
No, it is goal number 2. Turn your page.
Oh, there we go.
No, that's okay, but you've got it on number 1, which is fine. Just put a 2 by it, so I know that it's
Okay,
infrastructure.
our parking, but that's a citywide problem, as we all know, as a weakness, and that would probably go under infrastructure too, I imagine. And one that would show up almost everywhere, of course, is finance.
Okay.
Opportunities, economic and fiscal opportunities from our strengths along the waterfront, fishing, tourism, etc., and again, strong community support. Threats, not being able to afford improvements in necessary facilities, build and maintain. Both, that covers build and maintain. Again, maybe infrastructure. Yeah. And notwithstanding who our guests are, remembering who our guests are, trying to attract the wrong sector. So we have to remember who we're playing to here.
Talk about that a little more, please.
Well, I'm not in the tourist business, although I'm, interacting constantly. But by and large, we're playing to the valley people, Hanford and Bakersfield and those people over there, farmers, wonderful people, wonderful. A lot of very good friends there. Anyways, they making sure things are geared towards that. There's nothing we can do about it. I mean, it's not something for the Harbor Department. But we don't want to forget who we are trying to appeal to. And I think that was it.
So in that sense, you're talking about visitors.
Yes. Yeah, understanding who our guests are and not trying to attract the wrong sector.
Mm-hmm.
Did you want all of it? That was at the end of number one.
Briefly? Sure. Briefly.
So,
Just
number two.
Highlights?
Okay. Improve public infrastructure, knowing areas that need improvement and the will to act on these weak spots, past performance, boardwalk, bridge, etc. Just giving examples of past performance on the waterfront. Weaknesses, again, finance. And Gene will probably have more to say about this. Red tape, construction permits, and cost of permits. Opportunities, enhancing visitor experience, ensuring continued growth. Income areas, fishing and boating, I've got in parentheses. Threats, finances, again, seems it pops its head up everywhere. Cost, deferred maintenance, no action on weaknesses or actions to fix them. Those are threats. Complete updates to city land use and zoning policies and address affordable housing issues. Strengths, knowing there's a problem that must be solved. That's a strength in itself. At some point and now in the future. And housing is in parentheses. It's an example of that. Weaknesses, costs, red tape, permit process, and contractor support. And I'm not knocking this is not a jab at contractors out there, please. But it's the profitability aspect. You're in a business. You're in business to make money. And building affordable housing is not high up on the priority list when you've got valuable property. So let's see, opportunity is always an opportunity to fix what's broken or in need of repair, working with the industry to ensure affordable housing possibilities in new construction or renovation. Threats was just inaction. So go 3. Number 4, improve communication engagement with community strengths. Strengths, excellent community, excellent communication between the harbor officers and staff, always helpful and engaging. Existing programs and events are too many to list, and that's also done with the cooperation of the city. And that's meaning things like the Margarita Festival. There's always there, and the harbor endeavors to do many of these things. They have movies at the Rock, and we get the Kite Festival. It goes on and on and on. It's wonderful, really. Weaknesses, I've got it listed here now. I don't know if this might fit, but it's the need for the new harbor and Coast Guard facilities. And they've been in need for long time. I look at that as a weakness anyways. Opportunities, realizing our strengths and honing those skills. And I have continued to do a great job. And that's directed at the Harbor Department. Threats, finances, again, not catering to the right crowd, user groups, losing focus on what is working and what is not working. That's it.
Okay, thanks. Mark?
I've got just a few highlights to add on to that. Under strengths with regard to finance, we've got the overall consistency of the income stream. So low variance from high to low years. It's pretty dependable and predictable. Long-term leases reduce risk, and low cost of operation for the generation of the income in terms of administration of the leases themselves. Another strength that we have there is the operational management of the day-to-day operations within budgetary constraints. Few, if any, surprises in the expense categories. Under infrastructure, we got some strengths in terms of we're contiguous both to the public beach, the back bay, and the sandbar, versus being contiguous. Other harbors are contiguous to residential and commercial neighborhoods. So we have public access to surrounding activities and lands, which expands the enjoyment of our particular harbor as well. And another strength with regard to infrastructure is just the fact that Morro Bay is the only enclosed, protected harbor probably 100 miles north or south. So that in itself gives us a long-term strength. We have a very secure core for the harbor infrastructure, which does not require high maintenance. And that's generally the harbor wall, sandbar, and the rocks. The rock doesn't require a lot of our help, and it protects us with regard to our harbor. Weaknesses, financial weaknesses. Obviously, we're not keeping pace with the needs of our infrastructure. The harbor is much like a pensioner on a fixed income. Cost continues to rise and the income does not keep pace. So we're basically, inflation is taking over our pension, being our leases, and we're not keeping pace with maintaining the roof on the house. Another weakness is creating and maintaining financial reserves for large capital and maintenance projects, whether that be improvement or the existing maintenance thereof. I think we'll stop there and move on.
Okay. Therese?
Okay, I did mine similar to Jeremiah in regards to one being finance, and the strengths are that we do have a good budget that for the most part is in the black because of the master leaseholders and the money that is given from the leasehold property. Some of the weaknesses that I've looked at is that the cleanliness around, and the certain public benefits that are opportunities for us to get more people to come and spend their money at these leasehold properties, which therefore they will give more money, return funds back into the harbor department. So the opportunity is to have it cleaner, do a little bit of marketing, have all of the public amenities that are around be there, as well as be in good condition. Let's see, what else did I write? One of the opportunities to get more income is from charging the people that receive Harbor Department aid, such as what we did with the master fee schedule. It increased that, so that's a step in the right direction. Any entities that are doing business, land or water access without paying dues, we need to look at a way to get the funds from them, such as the vendors that might be coming out. We need to find a way that if they're going to be there anyway, we need to find a way to legally have an even playing field on there. So there's a possibility of having more income and having license agreements with them. The camping issue is an opportunity to get more income from that. Docks need maintenance. That is a weakness, and we need to think about the costs of those needs and where the income will come from that. The threats, always money. There's going to be other issues that are going to need to be funded over what the weaknesses are at this point. Infrastructure. I looked at it a little differently. I know that there's roads, but it's water and it moves. And the people who maintain that is the Harbor Department, which I think is a strength. They do a great job on the water side of things and with making it a safe place, dredging, and so that's strength. Weakness are the facilities, such as the bathrooms, the curbs, the lighting, trash, and sidewalks. Opportunity, or it's just a money issue, which is the threat. But the maintenance needs money. Okay. Third, housing and zoning. I'm not even going to touch Measure D, so I'm just going to go straight to housing. And indirectly, this affects the ability to operate businesses with a reasonable amount of staff. And since one of our biggest strength as far as the harbor goes is the money that we receive from tourism. The service industry is notoriously minimum wage primarily, and Morro Bay is becoming more of a place where nobody can afford to live here with that kind of pay. They'll move and work somewhere else. So I do believe that it is a concern for the harbor. And so 3 things I was thinking about is more housing in general. I went to the economic forecast last year, and they talked about housing, how a lot of counties, cities are trying to deter big houses, nice houses from moving in because we need this low-cost, affordable housing. But the fact is that if you build a nice new home, that somebody from a medium-sized home will move into a nicer home, and then it trickles up, and then there becomes housing in that level. So I feel like there needs to be a little less opposition, not from developments that come into the city as far as homes go. 2 is vacation. These are opportunities for us to change. Vacation rentals. It's a conundrum of how to investigate and find out which are illegal units. If it's just an actual second home and they're actually renting it out but not paying funds, we need to find a way to make sure that they're legal, and so those vacation rentals could possibly become available again to people who live in Morro Bay and need to work in Morro Bay. And then affordable housing, like apartments and whatnot, are very needed, and I know that there's a project that's up on Atascadero Road, which would be an opportunity for more housing. And then 4th is strengths, reaching out to people. This is improve communication and engagement with community. Before I became part of the Harbor Advisory Board, I was just another community member who figured, oh, they can't listen to what I have to say. My voice won't be heard. I'm just one person. And since I had a need to ask the council or the city for something, I realized that my voice does matter. And I think that the majority of people feel like that is the case, that it's just one vote. It's not really going to make a difference, but they need to know that we're here and able to listen, and that we're approachable. And the strength is that your voice really is heard, as long as you know that you can speak it. Weaknesses is just the way that it goes about it. We're doing a lot of emails and mailings, and people aren't looking at them the same way that they used to. There's different opportunities to have these things get out to the public, so they do know that their voices can be heard. And the cost of living, it's a weakness. It's really high here, so a lot of the people are so busy that they can't find the opportunities that are there in front of them to be talked to or heard as far as communication and engagement. One of the opportunities is social media. I know that we're trying, and I think that it could possibly be even a better attempt at social media and letting know people can get involved that way. This is an interesting one, but I think it's important. More hiring of city staffers that live within the community. I'm just going to leave it at that. And the threat of that is that it just takes a lot of time, and unfortunately, you have to listen to a lot of the same things, but once you involve yourself out there, it will be a benefit. I do really like the fact that we have the advisory boards, because even at my level, which goes to you eventually at the council level, I talk to people who talk to other people, and so it has like a tree effect or a root effect where a lot of people's voices are heard. And so I think that they know that they can, as long as we're available, they can speak with us too. And I don't know of a threat to that. I'm done.
Thanks. Thank you. Dana?
Yeah. Okay, so everything harbor. Achieve economic fiscal sustainability. I had commercial fishing industry, the recreational boating, maritime museum, national estuary, tourism. Let's see here. Weaknesses. Those were the strengths, by the way. Weaknesses: high infrastructure costs, lack of facilities, such as adequate boat yard and haul out. Let's see. Opportunities: continued restructuring lease sites, parking revenue, power plant, redevelopment, wind farm, marine facility, create revitalized marine industry. Tall ships. Threats: I have recession, finances, impact on tourism. Recession impact on tourism. Sea level rise, pollution, national estuary, loss of working waterfront, overdevelopment. Okay, number 2, harbor public infrastructure. Strengths: boardwalk, parking, T-piers, marina, mooring fields, facilities access for Harbor Department and the Coast Guard. Weaknesses: aging facilities, maintenance, repairs needed. Opportunities: boatyard, marine facility, rebuild launch ramp, wind farm, accessory facilities for the wind farm. Threats: financing, sea level rise, lack of, financing. Number 3, complete updates to city land use plans and zoning policies and address affordable housing. And this is for the harbor. So strength, implement the working waterfront plan as far as affordable housing on the harbor. I'd say you have liveaboards. That's why they're there, because it's more affordable than trying to rent a house. Weaknesses, expensive to live on the coast. That's the way it is. Opportunities, implement the plan. So what I'm talking about is implement the updates to the city land use plan and zoning policies. Let's see, opportunities also is campsites and marine facility. Threats, cost of living, high prices. Number 4, communication engagement with community. Strengths, just generally the happy people of Morro Bay. The HAB, the Harbor Department, the Chamber of Commerce, the Maritime Museum, Friends of the Harbor Department, the Morro Bay Yacht Club. These are all different groups that are associated with the harbor. Weaknesses, lack of interest by a larger part of community. Opportunity, Lynn Meissen could start a podcast called On the Bay. Threats, Lynn Meissen could start a podcast on the Bay. No. Disengagement. She's not here, so she can't hit me.
I guess she's going to have a podcast.
She can't see you, but she can hear you.
Okay, so to streamline the process, I'm just going to touch on some opportunities for each one of these. I think there's an opportunity to implement a long-term strategic plan for the harbor, which does not presently exist, which would include planning for national and/or regional economic downturns, which 2 of you have already touched on. I think the visitor servicing strategy can be improved with the San Luis Obispo County as it relates to the harbor. Provide a range of waterfront services that optimizes local and visitor interest and utilization. Yes, we have waterfront services, including the businesses and the activities and so on, but I'm not sure that we're optimizing. Improve partnering with existing lessees and other businesses to enhance harbor revenue. I feel pretty strongly about this one. It takes time, it takes effort. Nonetheless, convene an annual economic status and development summit with elected officials, the Morro Bay Chamber of Commerce, private sector waterfront businesses, and other involved and interested groups to assess and recommend solutions to economic challenges. I think that should happen at least once a year. Utilize all of the title and trust lease sites for generation of harbor fund revenues. Public infrastructure, accurately and consistently identify and define harbor-related infrastructure needs and requirements. We're doing a medium job of that, but there are things that we don't really know about our infrastructure because it takes, we don't have the ability to do it ourselves. By that I mean the city, so we'd have to hire people to do it, and money's always a challenge. We need to establish a defined process for the city departments to execute harbor-related infrastructure projects. As we've all noticed, sometimes isn't clear whether the harbor department is going to address some infrastructure repair, maintenance, or improvement thing, or whether it's going to be public works, and I'm not sure they know. So we can need a process, an agreed upon process as determined by City Council, directed by City Council, and executed by the city manager. Establish a city staff resource whose sole responsibility is to pursue public and private funding for harbor infrastructure maintenance, repair, and improvement, including, for instance, the rehabilitation of the harbor office. That person could pay for themselves. There's absolutely no question in my mind about that. That staffer would pay for themselves if they knew how to go about it.
Like a grant writer?
A grant pursuer is a better way to put it. And yes, they would have writing capability. Yeah, but yeah, they know where to go, or will learn where to go. It's the it's the information age. As far as the city land use planning, zoning, and all that business is concerned, I agree with Dana that the way I said it was pursuing the betterment of an effective and relevant working waterfront through the GPLCP update. Sharice kind of skipped over it, but I do think we need to achieve Measure D clarity because we're still not clear on some of those ambiguities. Maybe they will be by the time the LCP-GP comes out, but I haven't seen it yet. And then, Dana, you talked about the happy folks in Morro Bay. We could characterize them, for our purposes, as being an engaged and passionate citizenry. And so one of our opportunities there is to effectively channel and utilize their engagement. Communication and engagement with the community. Sharice already discussed this, utilizing social media and other electronic media as an effective tool in communicating with waterfront cities and businesses. That wasn't exactly what you said, but and also utilizing social media and other electronic media as an effective tool in promoting the harbor, which is more what you had in mind, I think. Improve and enhance another opportunity is to improve and enhance the council's utilization of the Harbor Advisory Board as a means to A, provide public input regarding the harbor-related matters, B, assess harbor-related environmental issues, C, serve as the sounding board relative to potential new harbor initiatives and business ventures, and D, annually review and report on the state of the harbor. So that's some of my thoughts about opportunities. So what I would ask each of you to do is to provide me electronically with a legible form of your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for each one of these 4 council goals, and to do so by next Friday, please, by Friday week. And then we'll create a collated document, and I'll circulate that. And once we're done with that, then we will do what council has asked us to do, and we'll send it up to them. Okay, thank you. I'll send you the PDF. No. I don't think I have an old Word document. Yeah, I can do it. I'll try to save it as Word 1899 or something like that. Yeah.
Word quill.
Yeah. Word quill, Mark says. That's good. Yeah. Okay, anything else on this agenda item? Any other thoughts? Mr. Endersby?
I think it's important.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, as I said, and I'm glad you agree, it's fundamental to our process. So, no comments? Okay. So that brings us to C, declaration of future agenda items. Do we have any agenda item that somebody would like to declare for the future? Okay. I think we will generate some out of this process. Yeah. Okay. Cherise?
Just something that I thought about is the stacks. They're working on the stacks right now. And one of the things that I asked last week is the star that they used to put up on the stacks.
Oh, yeah.
I loved it. It was a beacon, and it just, you felt the season. And since they're up there, can we ask them to put the star up at the same time?
You can ask them. When PG&E used to do it, the number they quote us for their time, money, and staff to do it was $10,000. It took them to do that. And it was never done when PG&E sold. None of the other companies that took over ever did it after PG&E.
So what exactly are they doing on top?
Putting antennas up and doing light work up at the top, but mostly stuff related to Diablo Canyon, I believe. Antennas and telemetry stuff.
Well, just climb up there, Cherise, and put a star up there. Yeah.
There are a series of pulleys up there that might be working. Maybe they can inspect them.
If you do go, I'll chip in like $50.
Okay.
I have a harness you can wear.
Oh,
Okay.
all right.
All right. That's it for us. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carries. Thank you for your time.